a home has been built the same way for the past 15, 20, 50 years. I think one of the ways that we continue to differentiate ourselves from our customers and kind of the way that we've been so successful is building on process and building on consistency and the relationships we have with our vendors and suppliers. We have a very distinct way of how we want to build our home.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Cory Higgins. He's the Director of Finance and Analytics at MN Custom Homes. Cory, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you. So, Cory, why don't you start? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about myself here at MN and then kind of go into the personal life stuff as well. So I've been with MN Custom Homes for about two and a half years as the Director of Finance and Analytics. On my team and kind of in my purview within the company, I've got kind of three distinct areas. I've got the data and engineering team. I've got a Salesforce team and a finance team. And kind of we are responsible for creating a data-driven organization so that the company can make decisions based off of informed data communication. And that's kind of our goal. Create a data-driven structure for the company. Outside of work, I golf as much as humanly possible. Getting married in September of 2023. I like to hike. I like to hang out with my golden retriever. But outside of work, just like to be outside, like to have a good time.
Oh, that's fantastic. Sounds like you've got a lot of really great things going on. So talk to me a little bit more about NM Custom Homes.
Yeah, MN Custom Homes, the company has been around for about 11 years, and we do infill luxury spec. And to kind of dive into what that means. So infill means that we are actually buying existing housing stock, often aged housing stock in good locations, but homes that are a little bit run down and maybe need some tender loving care. So we actually tear those houses down and put in new housing stock, oftentimes bigger, at a more luxury price point. And then spec, meaning that is a speculative investment. So we are building a home without a buyer, with the assumption that in our area, which is the Bellevue kind of east side of Washington area, that someone will be willing to buy that home. We've had great success over the past 11 years. I think we've built over 350 homes as of this year in the past 11 years, and we're on pace to hit $1 billion in cumulative revenue within the next 6 to 12 months.
Wow, that's fantastic. So two questions off of that. Is MN Custom Homes only in that Bellevue, Washington area?
As of right now, yes.
Yeah.
We kind of go from in Bellevue to the north, we go up to Kirkland, Kenmore area. And then on the south side, we go down to Eastgate, Mercer Island area. So very tight geographic area right now. We are looking at some additional opportunities to grow the business. One of the ways we look at our business is what are the bottlenecks, and a bottleneck being what would impede you from growing faster. So whether that be land constraints or capital constraints, people constraints. So right now we're looking at some of our land constraints and saying, okay, where can we go next?
I imagine, though, having that not necessarily small, but having that geographical area really allows you to get to know the communities a little bit better, though, in the places that you're putting your homes.
It does. We have a few partnerships with some nonprofits in the area, one of them being Imagine Housing, another one being Jubilee Reach. And we do have quite a bit of activity in the local area where we have employees go out. They'll spend days doing community service. One of our favorite partners, Jubilee Reach, will actually go to someone's home. Oftentimes it's someone who's had a life event or just needs some help. And they raise their hand and say, hey, we need some help with typically outdoor yard work, rebuilding a fence, doing a new roof, and employees will spend a day. We actually did 3 distinct days in 2022 where we just went out and helped people. So we do get to really know our community, be involved in the community. And, sometimes there's pushback on the product that we build because we are building a luxury product that oftentimes makes people feel like they're being placed out of a community. But we also think about it as a high tide kind of carries all boats. And we think our product provides additional value to the neighborhoods that we're in. And that's another way that we try to interact with the neighborhoods is just say, hey, we're here. We want to be here for an extended period of time. We want to work with the community and be a part of that community. We're not just building expensive homes.
Yeah. And, I'm curious, when you say that you build without a buyer, who would your client profiles be then?
Yeah, the majority of our client profiles are kind of the big tech employees. More than 75% of our buyers come from that big tech space. We've got 3 or 4 major tech companies within a 10-minute drive. That's kind of our corporate office. So that's really the majority of it. As part of our kind of expansion discussions that we're having, we're looking at how can we diversify our buyer pool.
Okay, interesting. And, I imagine that there are, other luxury home companies out there, in the area. How does MN work to really differentiate itself?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think one of the biggest things is we focus on being a very data-driven organization. And as I kind of alluded to the intro of my team and my role, we are running our business based on what the data tells us. And that data is to identify those bottlenecks. So like I said, people, capital, and then how can we mitigate or remove those bottlenecks using the data? Another thing that we're looking at is just where are our competitors? Like we don't want to build, I'm going to make this up. We don't want to build 10 homes in the exact same spot that one of our big competitors is, because you run the risk of oversaturating a market, pressuring yourself on price. So we're looking at the data to tell us, okay, where do we want to be and where do we not want to be going forward?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And to the point of building, in a certain area, you made mention earlier that you have good relationships with the community so that you want to make sure the community doesn't feel like they're being pushed out. Would you say that that's a very common misconception when people see, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there's something else that's bigger, but something along those lines, if people feel like they're being pushed out?
I think that's one of the misconceptions. I think the other one is just the noise and kind of the inconvenience that comes with construction, right? I mean, it's 8 to 12 months, depending on where you are and kind of the home size and everything else of inconvenience in your life. And I think a lot of people just have the misconception of, this is challenging for me. At the end of the day, though, once you have a beautiful finished product in your neighborhood, it's something that's typically better to look at than what was there before. Oftentimes, the lots that we're buying, kind of the old homes that we're buying, are overgrown weed patches. And really, I won't say we're doing a neighborhood a service, but I don't think the home that was in there previously was doing the neighborhood a service either. It was oftentimes doing it a disservice.
Interesting. I think that raises a really interesting point too. And I imagine that, people can feel strongly one way or the other. So, I think having those great community relations, doing the outreach that you do is so important. So, Cory, I think this has been a great conversation. As we start to wrap up, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, either about MN Custom Homes, about the industry, about your role with data and analytics? Anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things. One, people think the residential construction space is very, a home has been built the same way for the past 15, 20, 50 years. I think one of the ways that we continue to differentiate ourselves from our customers and kind of the way that we've been so successful is building on process and building on consistency and the relationships we have with our vendors and suppliers. We have a very distinct way of how we want to build our homes. We have MN values that we require our subs and our vendors to kind of comply with. And I think the construction industry continues to change. We're trying to leverage technology in a big way to be a construction company that is also a tech company, kind of as a hybrid. We're definitely not a tech company yet, but we're getting there. So I think it's a misconception, or kind of something that people should always think about when they think about the residential construction space. Is it does continue to evolve. There's a lot of cool things that are happening, and it's been a fun place to be.
I think that's fantastic. Well, Cory, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to break down the industry, the common misconceptions, where the industry is going. I think that's fantastic. And I really appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, great to have you.